conversation between friends over a passage of Scripture. I'm Carolyn Kirsten.
And I'm Marvin Williams.
And today is episode 134, continuing our chronological look at the Gospels. We're in Luke, jumping back to Luke a little bit, chapters 14 and 15. A lot of parables we're going to be talking through today.
That's right. So, two questions.
Okay.
You can answer whichever one you want.
Okay.
What kinds of excuses do you most resent others using? What kind of excuses do you most resent others using?
Okay.
Or how does it feel when you plan a big event and it is poorly attended?
Oh, well, maybe the second one, planning an event that is poorly attended, that is very disappointing with all the effort, all the work that I would put into it, and then it just feels like it's a waste. Kind of then related to the first question, excuses, I'm not a big fan because I think we all have 24 hours in a day. I mean, yes, we have, differing capacities. Those are kinds of the things I have to remind myself. When people give excuses, maybe it isn't an excuse, maybe there is a legitimate reason. I probably tend to filter things maybe more as excuses faster than I should. So that's not my favorite.
Yeah, I am with you on that. You put in time, you put in energy, you prepare food, you prepare whatever if it's a teaching or a game or whatever it might be, and no one shows up. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've given advance notice, you've sent out evites, you've sent out literally everything for people to show up, put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
And then I forgot. And so it says that whatever thing you were doing that wasn't life and death is more important than what we planned. And so it does make you feel some type of way that are we really important, or am I important enough for you to show up at an event? So why are we talking about this? Well, we're going to look at a number of different parables, but there's one in particular that where a host plans a big feast, plans a big banquet, in particular, and plans a big banquet, and the original guest list, they don't show up. Mm-hmm. And they have all kinds of excuses why they didn't show up. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But the chapters that we're looking at in Luke 14 and 15, Jesus begins with Luke 14 begins with a healing, and it's the Sabbath, and we've talked a lot about that. And then Jesus begins to share parables, a number of parables. And the first one that he shares was a parable of a wedding feast. And again, he looked at those who were wanting to sit in the best seats. Mm-hmm. And they came and they sat in the best seats, only for the host to say, yeah, this is not your section. So
ouch. That is painfully humiliating.
It's painful, humiliating. And yet I think that's exactly what Jesus is after, this whole idea of humility. Not only this idea of humility, but taking the lowest seats, so that humility is a posture as opposed to this, I'm acting humble, but I'm really prideful. Mm-hmm. But truly, this looking at this idea of what humility is, inviting those who can't repay us is a part of what humility is. Humility is not seeking a reward for doing things that we should do, and it is even blessing the less fortunate as a result. So Jesus opens with this parable to remind us what humility is all about, and what it means to have others to go first, even the less fortunate, those who can't repay us back.
Yeah, and that is so countercultural.
Yeah,
our culture says do whatever you can to elevate yourself, put your best foot forward, make the connections, But I do have a question. So does this mean that we should never seek a promotion at work?
No, it does.
Do we just sit back?
That's great. It's a great question.
Is that humility? I mean, is that an application of humility, that we just wait until something happens, or we shouldn't ever seek?
No, I don't think that's what that's what Jesus is talking about here. I think if you have the skill set and there's a need in your your job or what have you, I say go for it. But it's the heart attitude behind it that I think is the most important. What is the motive behind it? Am I seeking this promotion because I desire to do good work, and obviously the benefits that go with it, but I can make a contribution to
using the gifts and abilities that I have.
Yeah,
like that
absolutely.
we are called to do that.
So, but I think when we're here, it is this sense of this true unhealthy self-promotion. This is a self-centered kind of self-promotion here that Jesus is going after. It truly is. Humility is this idea of recognizing who I am in light of who God is and being okay with it. And so there's it has nothing. It has nothing to do with you can't seek a promotion. You can't be proud of good work. I think it has everything to do with what is my heart posture as I am doing this. This was clamoring to be seen. This was clamoring for the best seats, and almost to the point of being rude to clamor for these best seats. And Jesus says, "No, take the humble spot, and you will be recognized for that humility." In fact, the parable even says, if you take the lowest seats first, the host will say, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, no, you belong here." And there's this trust factor that even when somebody else doesn't recognize me, God does. And so again, I think it has doesn't mean you can't seek a promotion. I think it's the way you do it that matters most.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
No,
Yes.
that I think is really a helpful distinction.
And so Jesus tells another parable, and this one is the parable about the great banquet. He sends out dinner invitations to individuals that he wanted to be a part of the banquet. And they have excuses after excuse after excuse why they can't come, and I think that's a little bit kind of upsetting. And as a result of them not coming, he actually says, "Hey, I want you to go out and I want you to find the lame, the blind. I want you to find the marginalized, and I want you to invite them." Now, the interesting thing is the excuses that they make, they're not
doing terrible things.
they're not bad excuses,
no,
right?
they're not. They're very just practical. Like, hey, I just got married.
Yeah.
Hey, I bought five oxen, and I'm gonna try.
I gotta
them
prove
out.
them. Yeah.
Like they're good, even good things.
Yeah.
Good things that. But so then it does cause us to ask the question: what excuses am I making for spending time with God, or what am I prioritizing over God? And it might even be good things. We're not talking about terrible, sinful things here.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But we still can even choose what's good to the neglect of what's best.
Yeah. That is, I double click.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, those are good questions for us to ask
yeah.
ourselves regularly.
Yeah.
What am I prioritizing over God? What excuses am I making for spending time with Him? Like, working out in the morning is very good.
Yeah.
We know that's good for our bodies. But if my workout is the top priority and I'm never quite getting enough time to spend time praying or Bible reading or whatever, it's a good thing, but maybe you're prioritizing it too much.
Yeah.
And there's not like simple fast rules for these kinds of things. It really is a heart evaluation that we really need to do on a regular basis. What am I Are there things I'm prioritizing over God? Am I making excuses and for spending time with Him?
Yeah.
And He's inviting us to a party. I like that part too.
That's right. And the fact they didn't show up, the beautiful part about the host is that he wanted his house to be full.
Yeah.
He wanted his house to be full. He wanted, and if we liken the host to God, which is that's what Jesus is doing here, is he wants his house to be full. And he says, I will do everything for my house to be full, even to the point I will go out and find the ones who cannot repay me. I will give lavish grace on the marginalized. I will lavish grace on the ones who didn't think they deserved to be at the party. Mm-hmm. In fact, in this time, they would not have been invited to the party. Yeah. And so Jesus gives this great illustration that I am going to invite the ones you think are undeserving and don't belong at the party. And I think that there will be many in the kingdom of God who we just didn't expect to be there. And there will be people who we expected to be there.
Who didn't follow up on the invitation.
Who didn't follow up on the invitation.
Yeah.
So I think, when we look at this, even today, I think God wants his house to be full. Now, we're not talking about the building per se. We are talking about he wants as many people to be a part of his family as possible. Mm-hmm. And that means the very rich to the very poor, those who are very eloquent and those who are not. That his inclusivity crosses all boundaries, crosses all lines, and it gives us a mission. And that mission is send out the invitation. We can't make people come, but we can send out the invitation and invite them to the party that the Father has for them. Mm-hmm. And we are to be faithful over the process, not over the outcome. And so I think this is a prayer we should all pray. Man, God, who are the people you want to invite to the party? And help me to be courageous enough to send out the invitation, give the invitation. So I love this. Again, another parable that challenges us. Yep. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think the next section, the heading in my Bible, calls it the cost of following Jesus.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting counterweight to that parable where we've just said, following God, it's a party. I mean, he uses the metaphor of a party. And then I kind of picture Jesus saying, okay, but hold on. It's not just a party. Yeah. There is a cost to following. And you may face persecution. There is a commitment to this. It's not just life is a party when you follow Jesus. I just think that's not an accident that said, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple, is verse 27. Yeah. That is not a party. Yeah. But it is a party, and it's also this reality of there is a cost to following Jesus. Absolutely. It will change your life.
It will change your life. And that's the reason in verse 30 and 31, Jesus says, hey, anyone who starts following me or is contemplating following me, you need to count the cost. You need to count the cost. It's, and I think as Christians, we have sold people a bill of goods. That's not necessarily true. I mean, not in the larger scheme. We say, follow Jesus and everything will be okay. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say that, and then when the bottom drops out, or when they're persecuted or ridiculed or rejected, I thought you said everything was going to be okay. And so we've kind of sold a false Christianity to individuals. And so that's the reason Jesus says, hey, you need to count the cost. It's going to be there. Yes, you will have the party, but there are going to be days where it's rough. Yeah. Where Christianity following me is going to be unremarkable. Mm-hmm. So there won't be the mountain of transfiguration. There won't be the night fights on Mount Carmel. There won't be the voices from Mount Horeb that says, here are the 10 commandments. A lot of it is going to be at the foot of the mountain with people who are scared, afraid, anxious, people who are being harassed by demons. Literally, they're going at the foot of the mountain. That is the reality of what it means sometimes to follow Jesus. And so Jesus says, hey, you need to count the cost before you start following me, because it's going to get tough at times. Yeah.
And how valuable that is, actually, to know that and to have that light of being able to push through. Yeah. I was talking to BT a little bit ago, actually, about The Critical Journey, which I know is a book you read too, and I'm just finishing up for the spiritual direction training I'm doing, and that idea of the wall. Yeah. That I mean, I think that is kind of what we're alluding to here. Like,
stage 4.
Yep. And maybe things have been just going along great, and you're loving your Christian community, and you're getting involved, and you're seeing God at work, and then boom, something. Maybe it's a personal crisis. Maybe it is just a crisis of belief. Maybe it's just a wah, 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 like everything all of a sudden is just black and white and dull.
Yeah.
And we have a choice then. Like, are we going to move through that, or are we going to let that just cause us to spin off and spiral and leave the church, leave, whatever. I mean, spiral back to something that feels less challenging. I just think I've thought a lot about that. And so that's why it came to mind here again. Like, yes, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Jesus did tell us that. Like, there's going to be days like that, like this. Right. And that's important for us to remember, and can even give us hope when those days come.
Yeah.
That that's not it.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
we can have the courage to push through.
Yeah, I love it. So we come to chapter 15, and this is a very, very familiar story. Jesus actually tells this story in relation to Pharisees and religious leaders who number one, thought they were all that, but also did not, they didn't think very highly of individuals who were tax collectors and sinners. And so they grumbled. That's the word that the ESV says, that the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." And little did they know that was a compliment to Jesus. And so it wasn't like a dig. It was actually a compliment, because that's who he came for. And so he tells this story of a young man who comes to his father and says, "Hey, listen, I wish," kind of in first century vernacular, "I wish you were dead. Give me my inheritance." And he goes, and the father does give it to him. And he goes and he lives a wild life. And that wild life, he spends everything that he has. And as he spends everything, he's like hungry. And he goes and he attaches himself to a landowner. And he's so like I am so down and out. I'm down bad right now. And so even he says, "I want to eat the food of the pigs." And immediately comes to his senses and says, "Man, at least if I go home, my father will treat me better than what I'm experiencing now." And he gets up and he starts going home, and we see what, as he gets closer and closer to home, we see what happens then.
That his father is actually watching for his return.
Man, that's so good.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, think of all of the things he could be doing. Yeah. Having written him off, completely forgotten about him. Nope. Instead, he is watching, hopeful for his return.
Yeah.
And when he sees him, he doesn't just stand. He's not standing there with his arms crossed. Now you're going to get it.
Yeah.
He runs to him, which in that culture would have been very undignified. That is not something that an older person would do. He runs to him and embraces him and welcomes him back. So as countercultural, undeserved love as you could, like, that is it right there.
Yeah.
The father's response.
Yeah. I am, I don't think I've, the first time I read the story, and even to this day, when I read it, I get emotional all over again, just because here's a father who is looking for his son, recognizing that he's going to come back. Mm-hmm. He's going to come back. And when he does come back, I want to make sure that I'm postured in a way that he knows that he is still loved and not condemned. And even, this story is really the third story of three that Jesus tells. And really the nature of all three is that God values every person regardless of the state they're in. Mm-hmm. He values, no matter where you've gone, no matter how lost you've been, he values and loves, and God is gracious. He's ready to respond with forgiveness, not condemnation. He is eager to forgive. He is eager to be generous. He is eager to restore those who have who were lost and who are lost. And I just love that. The truth is, we can say that that we are walking with God and still be lost, like the young son. We can be in a far country, even claiming to be close to God. And so, but the Father is so ready, to invite us back to a deep and abiding relationship. And so I love this picture of the readiness of the Father.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there's another son.
There's another son
as well. I've heard some people say, it really should be called the parable of the lost sons, plural.
Yeah.
Because the second one, while he didn't leave home, he didn't, abandon his father and take the inheritance and go. He really is just as lost. But when his brother returns, he's mad.
Yeah.
And says, "Hey, I've done everything. I've been the good kid.
Yeah.
And where's my party?"
Yeah.
He kind of he confronts his dad, and we see there, man, he was not, while he was there, he wasn't experiencing the love of his dad. He didn't recognize he didn't value their relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't disown him, but he doesn't understand his father's love. And I think the son that went away and came back, he knew he was desperate for God's love.
Yeah.
And he's the one that really received it. The other had been playing a good kid game, but he really didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't see him get it. That's the heart, he stays out.
He stays out, and we don't know the rest of his story, but I think part of the rest of his story is our story. Will we be graceless and judgmental like the elder son, or will we be, into your point, will we be desperate for the Father's love and trust that He is ready to restore, forgive, bless, and to celebrate that this. You were dead, but now you're alive. You were blind, but now you see. You were lost, but now my son is found. My daughter is found. And so, I think part of the way Luke ends the story, the way Jesus ends the story, is for us to pick it up and say, will we be like the first son, who was lost, knew he was lost, and was desperate for his father's love and his acceptance and restoration, or will we be like the older son, graceless, judgmental, resenting the fact that God is lavishing His grace on someone we think doesn't deserve it? So I think it comes full circle.
Yep.
This story is really a slap in the face to all the scribes and Pharisees and religious leaders. It's my prerogative who I will lavish my grace on. I will lavish my grace on those who you think deserve it, and those who you do not think deserve it. And I'm humbled again by the story all over again, is that why would the God of the universe lavish such grace on undeserving people like us, or undeserving person like me? And so I see the elder son in me so much.
Yeah, me too.
And I have to really, really be careful, and to say, God, give me a desperation, for your love. Yeah.
So Jesus tells these stories, and what can we believe about God, ourselves, and others from them?
Yeah, I think, man, just out of the gate, that God loves. He loves those we think are undeserving and shouldn't be at the banquet. And He makes room he makes room at the table for those who are marginalized, undeserving, and He lavishes His grace on those who rightfully, the younger son, rightfully did not deserve a party.
Yeah.
And yet God says, in the story, the Father who represents God, I will lavish my grace on whom I will. And the ones who deserve it the least, those are the ones I'll lavish my grace on. So, and then for me to receive it, and to watch my elder brother attitude, and let God excise that out of me and create desperation in me.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. and for sure something we can believe about God, that in each of these lost parables, whether it's the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost sons, I'm going to say it with an S, God is represented, showing that he's searching, that he's seeking, he's celebrating. Like, that is his posture towards us. As you said, he wants the banquet, the party to be full, which he doesn't need us. And yet he set things up so that we get to be a part of that relationship, and that we see him, whether that is going after one lost sheep, searching for one lost coin. Like, Jesus sees and knows each of us specifically. He celebrates over each of us specifically. 1 in 100 sheep. You might not think, one little sheep, what does that matter? But it does. It matters to God. And then for myself, thinking back on that parable of the large banquet, are there things that I'm prioritizing over God, or making excuses? And I just don't want to get that mixed up.
Yeah.
And it can be easy to do. It's something I want to regularly reflect on. Am I putting him first?
Yeah.
So
great and sobering conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, friends, for joining us. Encourage you to have your own spiritual conversation with a friend this week.